I told you my level of concern, but you walked by like you never heard. And you can bring down my level of concern. Just need you to tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. Panic on the brain, Michael's going insane. Julie starts to make me nervous. I don't really care what they would say. I'm asking you to stay in my bunker underneath the surface. Wondering, would you be my little quarantine? Or is this the way it ends? 'Cause I told you my level of concern, but you walked by like you never heard. And you can bring down my level of concern. Just need you to tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. Tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. Tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. And bring down my level of concern. Just need you to tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. 'Cause I told you my level of concern, but you walked by like you never heard. And you can bring down my level of concern. Just need you to tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. I told you my level of concern, but you walked by like you never heard. And you can bring down my level of concern. Just need you to tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. Tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. Tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay. Bring down my level of concern. Just need you to tell me we're alright, tell me we're okay.
Well, welcome to Cedar Creek. We are so glad that you joined us this weekend. We're going to sing a couple songs and worship Jesus so that we can connect our hearts to who he says we are. And so as we sing these, just feel free to connect in your living room, wherever you are. We're going to worship together, so let's lean in.
See him now, King of heaven, Son of God, enthroned above. Heavy cross upon his shoulders, carried for us, carried for us. See him now, our King surrender, final word of perfect love. Hear his cry, Father forgive them, spoken for us, spoken for us. Then he said it is finished. Oh, our hope had just begun. The grave has lost its hold. Arise, the stone is gone. Our God reigns forevermore. All praise to him belongs. Lift high his name alone. Jesus came, paid it all. Then he rose. Then he rose. Now we rise by his Spirit. In his name we overcome. All our hope in this same power, living in us, living in us. For our sin is defeated. Oh, the war has now been won. The grave has lost its hold. Arise, the stone is gone. Our God reigns forevermore. Death, lay your weapons down. Sin, you're defeated now. The stone is rolled away. Our God reigns. Crown him with many crowns. Soon every knee will bow. The stone is rolled away. Our God reigns. Death, lay your weapons down. Sin, you're defeated now. The stone is rolled away. Our God reigns. Crown him with many crowns. Soon every knee will bow. The stone is rolled away. Our God reigns. The grave has lost its hold. The rise, the sun is gone. Our God reigns forevermore. All praise to Him belongs. Lift high His name alone. Jesus came, paid it all, then He rose.
Who is the great King of glory, seated on high in the heavens? Oh, Jesus, you, Lord. You are the Lord God Almighty, strong in compassion and mercy. Oh, Jesus, you alone. And I've searched the world for a love that could fill my heart, but nothing compares to the wonder of who you are. Holy, all the earth singing holy, all the angels cry holy, Jesus, you for salvation. You broke the curse for our freedom. Oh, Jesus, you Lord. You rose from death with the morning. You'll come again in your glory. Oh, Jesus, you alone. Jesus, you all the earth singing holy, all the angels cry holy, Jesus, you alone. Worthy, all creation sings worthy, all the heavens exalt thee, Jesus, you alone. All the earth singing holy, all the angels cry holy, Jesus, you alone. You alone are worthy, all creation sings glory, all the heavens exalt thee, Jesus, you alone. Jesus, you
Well, I love the line in that song that says, I've searched the world for a love that can fill my heart, but nothing compares to Jesus, who you are. See, as a church, we want to create spaces and places where you can be introduced to Jesus and the life-changing adventure with Him. One of the ways that we get to do that every single week is through the groups that are happening all throughout the week, all over the country. And you can join one of those groups. But in order for us to reach thousands of people through groups, we need hundreds of leaders to say yes to the call that God is placing on their heart to step up and lead. Don't take my word for it. I want you to hear from one of our incredible leaders on her journey of joining a group to leading a group.
When we first started coming to Cedar Creek, my husband and I were just married. Since then, we've been probably in every group you can imagine, whether it's been couples or married with children. Nobody is perfect. Everyone has their own set of struggles. And as we were so supported and loved through the groups that we experienced, we knew we wanted to create a space for even more people to get involved. I really felt passionate about leading a women's group specifically. So I just wanted to provide a space for people to feel connected and to learn more about God and each other. We meet on Wednesdays during the day from like 9:30 to 11. The ladies come in, we socialize, we grab a cup of coffee, we sit down and talk, and then we dive right into God's Word. Right now I have a passion for the women and myself to learn how in the heck to even study the Bible, because it can be so overwhelming. So as soon as the stay-at-home order happened, I immediately thought about my group. And then I also wanted to provide a space for other people who maybe weren't even in a group yet. Being able to see people in real time, talk to them, talk about our study, see what's going on in their life. And it's definitely not the same as being face-to-face, but it's a real close second when it comes to how you're able to connect and you feel like you're not alone in this. So if you're considering leading a group, I will just tell you this. The fact that you're considering it means there's a good chance God's put it on your heart and that you are totally capable. Just whatever you're passionate about, think about that and pray about that and see, is this a space that I can create for other people to connect in this way? People are craving connection, and you just don't know what God can do in you and through you by just saying yes to that simple step of inviting others into your life in a group situation.
Well, Kim, I'm incredibly grateful for the way that you stepped into the role of leadership and the difference that that is making in so many people's lives. Thank you. And for those of you out there right now who God is calling to lead a group, we need you. We need you to go to cedarcreek.tv/groups right now to learn how you can sign up to lead a group in this coming semester. And together, God will use us to rise up, to rise together and make a difference.
Be very careful.
Oh no.
That's my new coworker.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Cedar Creek this weekend. One church, thousands of locations. And if you have the option to attend on Sunday, I'd encourage you to just shut this thing down, because Jesus will love you tomorrow, and he'll love it if you go outside right now, if you're in Northwest Ohio, and enjoy the weather. That's right. I'm not stuck in here, but I'm stuck in here. And as soon as this service is over, I'm going to be ready to go out there. So wherever you're joining us, I'm so glad you are taking a few minutes to spend with us as we continue our series wherever you're at. I was just looking at the chat, and so I think I'm going to help answer some of your questions in a little bit that you all seem to be asking. But in order to connect a little bit and to engage, here's the question that I'd love for you to put in the chat to help me. What is one foolish thing that you did this week? Like a little foolish mistake that you made just this week. If there's something fun that you feel comfortable sharing, put that in the chat. I'd appreciate that. I do want to let you know, a few weeks ago, we released a shirt in partnership with Jupe Mode, and Jupe Mode really started this Here for Good campaign, where they're going to release shirts for local businesses, and half of the $20 cost goes to the production of the shirt, and the other half goes to the business. And so they had like 400 businesses sign up. And so we decided to add a Rise Together shirt to the mix. And up until last week, we were actually number one in the Here for Good campaign. And this past week, the Toledo Zoo passed us. It's not a competition. But I just wanted to let you know that 338 shirts have been purchased, which is $3,380, probably, and some more. And we're not keeping that money. We're actually going to give it away to the medical clinic team in order for them to buy supplies or whatever it is that they need to provide the free health care to our community. I just wanted to say thanks. And if you're still looking for a shirt, we have an opportunity to beat the Toledo Zoo. I'm just saying, but it's not a competition. We're just having a little bit of fun. I also want to let you know that our Perrysburg staff and some of our dream team got together to write 200 You Matter cards. And Larry Moore, who's a part of our Perrysburg campus and also with the McDonald's Corporation, gave us coupons to include a free value meal to them. And they delivered them this week just as a way of saying, man, you're making a difference, and we care about you. And I'm just so honored and humbled to be a part of a church that's proactively finding ways to make a difference. And those of you that call Cedar Creek home, it is your generosity that's really helping us do that. In fact, if you want to give, you can do that now on our app or on our website, cedarcreek.tv/give, or you can text 77977 to cedarcreek.tv, or in the message put Cedar Creek. I know there are over 400 of you who've switched over to giving online, or you've given for the very first time in the last 10 weeks. And I just personally want to tell you thanks, because you are accelerating our ability to reach our mission right now, to introduce people to Jesus and the life-changing adventure that he has for all of us. And so thank you so much for those of you that call Cedar Creek home, and you continue to invest and partner with us in this incredible season. And you know, this weekend restaurants are opening, which means I'm getting more questions. It's all over the chat. When will Cedar Creek open up? We've never closed. That's right. We've been more open now than ever. In fact, God continues to use our weekend service to help people take their first step, to introduce people to Jesus. We see people attending online, and I know, I see some of your eye rolls. You know what I mean, Ben. When are you going to physically open back up? And here's what I can tell you. It's not going to be soon enough for some of you, and it's going to be way too soon for others of you. So here's how you can help us as we begin to plan. What I want you to know is that I was on a call with local pastors this past week, and we're talking about a coordinated open weekend, and we're going to have another call this coming Tuesday. And so it's cool for churches to be working together and talking it together. What are we learning together? And we're watching some other churches that have decided to open early, earlier than we are, opening in the next week or two. And so we're going to keep paying attention to what's happening nationally. But your voice would be really helpful. In fact, we've included a survey on our app. If you haven't downloaded our app, I'd encourage you to do that. But this survey is so valuable. Your voice is so valuable. I'm actually going to walk through the questions now. I would love for you to take the survey now, which means if you're watching on a device or a laptop or a cell phone, you can actually stop the service, go and take the survey. It will be really helpful for us to understand where people are at, and it may be 50-50, but we would love to know where you're at with some of these questions. I'm going to walk through them now so that we can kind of walk through them together. So if you're watching on your TV and you're taking the survey, go there, click it open. The first question is, since COVID-19 crisis, how often have you attended a Cedar Creek service online? And the answer to that is we've been meeting for, this will be our 10th week. So think the last 10 weeks. Is this your first time, 2 or 3 times, 4 or 5 times, or nearly every week? The second question, I usually attend Cedar Creek service online via the app or on a smartphone or tablet, on our website, on a laptop, YouTube, which is a new growing audience, some other form, Facebook, you're on the Facebook stream, Apple TV, or Roku. If you could let us know what you usually do, that would be great. Number 3, I use Cedar Creek app in the following ways. You can check all that apply: prayer requests, weekend service, message notes, give, notifications, access, living it out. I'm not sure what you mean by app. You're probably not taking the survey. Number 4, how long have you been attending Cedar Creek? You just started recently attending. Welcome to Cedar Creek. I'm glad you're here. Less than a year, 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5, over 5 years. That'll be great. This is going to be really helpful for us. Number 5. How likely, yes, this is helpful. How likely is it that you would recommend Cedar Creek to a friend or colleague? Let us know. 0, not likely. 10, very likely. And as of this week, how satisfied are you with the way that we at Cedar Creek have been responding in the midst of this crisis? Very dissatisfied or very satisfied? Let us know. This is the question that I was referring to. In early January, I would have rated my emotional and or mental health as 0, not doing great, I'm struggling, or 10, doing awesome. If you could let us know where you were at, that would be great. Today, in comparison to January, today I would rate my emotional or mental health as 0, struggling, or 10, doing great. Just be candid wherever you would put yourself, that'd be awesome. Number 9, this will be also helpful for us. How has COVID-19 crisis significantly disrupted your income? 0, no disruption. 10, extreme disruption. Number 10, I would describe my current posture on coming back to physical services at Cedar Creek. Please read through these. I would return as soon as the buildings are open without hesitation. I would return with appropriate social distancing and health precautions in place. That's option 2. Option 3, I would prefer to meet physically in a small group with people that I know for now. I would prefer to continue to attend online for now, or I would return when we have a vaccine or some other helpful, robust medication to help us fight COVID-19. If there's some other indicator, let us know what that is. Your honesty there would be great. Number 11, when physical services resume, what health measures will you be willing to observe if necessary to attend? Wear a mask, sit and stand in places where I'll be 6 feet from others other than my own family, avoid any contact with people, avoid contact with supplies and resources, limit service size based on room occupancy, follow one-way traffic. I'm not willing to do any of that stuff. Let us know where you're at. That'd be helpful. Number 12, do you expect the church to offer children and student services when we reopen? Yes, as soon as we return. Maybe if the church can establish good precautions. No, I'd have them with me in the auditorium with my family, with the adults. I'm not really sure. Let us know where that's at. 13, this is really some basic demographic information. Let us know what campus you would consider your home or most typical campus that you attend. Number 14, please enter your age. Number 15, male, female, prefer not to answer. Number 16, what's your current marital status? Any of those, or prefer not to answer. 17, what are the ages of your children? Check all that apply. If you could let us know what that is, that'd be great. Number 18, is there anything you would like to share with us? You could put that in here. And number 19, go back one. 19, would you like someone to contact you about the above? And if so, you could give us your contact information. Or if you just want us to have your contact information and you're not sure that we do, put it there. All right, that's simple. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share your information with us. Your voice will be so helpful as we begin to finalize our prep and the different things that the CDC is asking us to think about doing when we open up our physical locations again. I really appreciate it.
In these certain times,
In these certain times, one thing that's for certain is our level of certainty. you don't have to wonder what's going on. There are answers.
All you need is a favorite podcast or an acquaintance that works at a hospital. In just 2 months, we have managed to collectively come together and all become experts on pandemic-related topics.
Just call up a relative. Ask a neighbor.
They will know for certain whether or not COVID-19 was manufactured in a lab or if the United States is just interested in making money off of vaccinations.
Sure, a doctor who's studied infectious disease for 45 years might have one thing to say, but you read a blog post written by your friend's former classmate, and you skimmed the first couple paragraphs of an Atlantic article that you would have kept reading had you not scrolled down and seen how long it was. Who's to say who's right? We are. In these certain times.
If something labeled a documentary shows up on your Facebook feed, you can be 100% certain it is certainly true. It's a documentary after all. They wouldn't call it a documentary if it wasn't true.
In no uncertain terms,
There are good guys and there are bad guys. The good guys are the ones you agree with, obviously.
and the bad guys, they're the ones who are biased, unobjective, agenda-driven. They watch the other channel. Certainty and correctness go hand in hand. The more certain you feel, the more correct you are.
Certainly this isn't something that the entire world is uncertain about.
I can say for certain that who you voted for in the 2016 presidential election determines what you think about this pandemic and what's really going on.
In these certain times,
You can be certain. I can be certain. We can be certain.
don't let anyone take away your certainty.
Your certain beliefs are the right ones. And there's a study that confirms it.
We're all in this apart.
We're all in this apart.
Fun, the more I laugh. So that's incredible. Hopefully you are laughing too, because the truth is we don't want to get stuck here. We are all certain about everybody else being wrong, myself included. And I think our certainty is dividing us. It's actually not helping us rise together. And so we've been talking about some key things that we need to lean into. We need to keep dreaming. We need to keep growing. We need to keep our character. We need to keep caring. That's what we've been kind of covering over the last few weeks. And today, I want to offer something that's so practical that some of you may not feel like it's actually spiritual enough for church. And so the bottom line, if you're taking notes on your app, is this: we need to keep asking the best question ever. That's right. We need to, if we're going to rise together, we collectively need to keep asking the best question ever. And what is the best? I'm so glad you asked. The best question ever is, what is the wise thing to do? Not what is the safe thing to do only, because sometimes the wise thing doesn't feel safe. And I'm not talking about whether you should wear a mask at the grocery store or not. We can save that certain conversation for another day. But I'm talking about in the everyday choices and in the life-directing choices that you make. We need to ask what's the wise thing to do, not what's the comfortable thing to do, not even what's the best thing to do, not what's the easiest thing, not what even feels right in the moment. What's the wise thing to do? When you ask that, you know what it does? It helps foolproof your life. And where I first heard this whole content was in a book by Andy Stanley. Maybe you've heard of it before. It's called The Best Question Ever by Andy Stanley. In fact, if you don't like what I'm going to share with you today, you can go ahead and email Andy because he's the one who really inspired the content that you're going to hear today. But I promise that if you apply this to your life, it will make your life better. It will make you better at life. And some of you are concerned right now. You're like, I thought I was coming to a church service, not like a self-help seminar. You're worried that this is just going to be a how can you improve your life kind of talk. And here's the interesting thing, is some people mistakenly confuse wisdom with self-help. Let's start with the definition of wisdom. Wisdom is this: it's the practical application of God's principles in your life. God has principles of wisdom for your finances, for how you use your words, for how you take care of your physical body, for your work, for your sex life, for your physical well-being, all of this stuff. If you see them as rules, then you don't know God. Like you don't have a personal relationship with God. You think God is your cosmic killjoy, putting all of these rules in your life. But the truth is, he offers wisdom, and he invites us to apply this wisdom to our life. And it makes life better, and it makes us better at life. Self-help, on the other hand, is this belief that each person is in control of their life. People who pursue self-help, and there are plenty of people out there, they're not bad people. They just feel like with the right information, with the right application of hard work, I can change my life, I can do better, and ultimately, you are trying to control your life. And here's what's interesting. For people who pursue self-help, you can apply biblical principles, godly wisdom to your life, and it'll make your life a little better. It's difficult, it's exhausting, it doesn't last. It's like trying to plant flowers on your driveway. You just lack the proper foundation and soil to make it thrive and to make it grow. Eventually, you'll burn out. It's when our lives are connected with Jesus that he helps us become what we cannot, and he forgives us when we fail. It's not all on our shoulders. I mean, look at what it says in the Proverbs. It says, for the Lord grants wisdom. Some translations say, all wisdom comes from God. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. So when you realize this, then you realize that the best question ever, or wisdom, is deeply spiritual. It's a deep act of trust to honor God with your finances, to honor God with wise boundaries in your relationships with your family, or in your romantic life, in your physical well-being. To not do so would be foolish. And so we just need to ask, what's the wise thing to do? I think the reason it's so complicated to think about that is because we're bombarded with all sorts of choices, and we're bombarded with our own feelings. And so when we get bombarded, we just do what feels good. And it's not always bad to do things that feels good. What we don't realize is how fast feeling good can turn into something foolish in a moment. Like when I think about when I was in college, it felt good at the start of getting wasted all weekend. It did not feel so great afterwards, the next day. And sometimes when I look back, I realize what I did was quite foolish, right? Hypothetically speaking, another example would be like, just hypothetically speaking, staying up too late, binge watching your favorite show on Netflix, or let's say playing Fortnite, until like 2 a.m. with some friends. I mean, that's fun, yes, but the next day it doesn't feel so fun. I mean, basically all of TikTok looks like it's fun at first, but it just looks like some foolishness. And you might think, Ben, stop being such a killjoy. I mean, we all need to have a little bit of fun. And I agree. We need to have fun in life. I'm not trying to get rid of the fun. I just want you to see that foolishness actually costs us more than we realize. Like our foolish choices on the surface, I mean, they embarrass us, right? You try to impress the girl and you fall flat on your face, or you try to be funny and nobody laughed at the joke. And we can live with that level of foolishness. If all foolishness did was cause a little embarrassment, no harm, no foul. The problem is we continue to make foolish choices, it inconveniences us. It means we went too fast on our way to work, we were a bit foolish, and the cop pulled us over, or we rolled through the stop sign because we're in a hurry, and now we end up with a ticket. Or we bought something that we really didn't need, but now it's taking more work, or it's costing us more money than we realized. We were foolish with our words, and now we have a broken relationship, and we're inconvenienced. If we continue to make foolish choices, they start to hurt us, though. And what's interesting is when you get hurt, you blame everybody else, but it's really your foolish choices that caused it to begin with. And ultimately, if we're not careful, foolishness is going to limit the life that you want, the life that you're dreaming of. It's going to restrict the hopes and dreams that you have. It's going to put limitations on you because of the choices that you make. Some of you are dealing with those right now. This is what makes the story of Joseph so inspiring. It's like, even when things didn't go the way that he wanted, even when he got what he didn't deserve, even when it was painful and uncomfortable, all along the way, he seems to ask, what's the wise thing for me to do here? You're going to see that again in week 5, in episode 5. In fact, if this is the first time that you're tuning in, we're in episode 5. There are 4 other episodes that I would encourage you, if you wanted to, you could stop now, go back on our app and begin at the very beginning and binge watch all of them today on our website or on our app. But today, we're going to pick up where we left off last week. Pharaoh has a dream. The most powerful man arguably in the world has a dream. And when he goes to his dream interpreters, they don't know what it is. When he goes to his local religious leaders, they don't know what it is. He's talking to everybody about it, and he can't figure it out until one of his staff one day says, you know, when I was doing some time in prison, this guy by the name of Joe helped me interpret a dream that I didn't understand. And so Pharaoh sent for Joseph at once, and he was quickly brought from the prison, and after he shaved and changed his clothes, he went in and stood before Pharaoh. Come on, can I get an amen? We all should be able to relate with Joseph. It's like, as we're coming out of quarantine, we need to shave, and we need to change our clothes. Some of you have been wearing the same outfit for the last 5 days, okay? So just imagine for a moment what Joseph is feeling as he's entering, as he's cleaning up, as he's going to face the most powerful man in the world, something he never saw coming. And as he comes in, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream last night, and no one can tell me what it means. But I've heard that when you hear about a dream, you can interpret it. Now, what you may not understand about the Egyptian culture is dreams were typically considered to be messages from the divine. In fact, some archaeologists have found dream interpretation resources in a lot of ancient cultures. The oldest dream interpretation book, Dream Book, can be dated back about 4,000 years. And do you know where they found it? In Egypt. So imagine Joseph is before the most powerful man in the world, and he looks at Joseph and says, hey, I hear you're pretty good at interpreting dreams. I mean, what a compliment. Joseph could have said, well, why, yes, I do. That would have been the successful thing to do. That might have been the best resume building thing to do. But instead, Joseph asks, what's the wise thing to do? And he replies. He says, it's beyond my power to do this. Say, what? Pharaoh just said, you're really good at interpreting dreams. But Joseph's like, no, it's beyond my power to do this, but God can tell you what it means and set you at ease. Why does he do this? Because wisdom reminds us what is God's to clarify what is ours. When we ask what the wise thing to do is, it reminds us that there is a domain that is God's and not ours, and then clarifies what is our responsibility. You see, Joseph, he could have taken credit for this. He could have taken credit for his past. Why, yes, these two guys, I successfully interpreted their dreams. But instead, he remembered what was God's instead of taking God's responsibility or title upon himself. Joseph also could have been overwhelmed. He could have been experiencing a lot of overwhelmed fatigue, like, oh my goodness, this is so much pressure. It's all on me. Pharaoh is looking at me to do all of this. And I think sometimes you do this. I do this. We put all of the pressure on our shoulders. We've got to solve it as if God doesn't exist. And that's foolish. It's foolish to try to take credit for what is God's. It's also foolish to try to put on ourselves all of God's responsibility. Instead, we need to ask. Maybe you need to ask, what do you need to surrender here? What credit do you need to give back to God? What is God's that you are ultimately trying to take? And instead of carrying all the weight, instead of trying to be God, know that God's got this, that he's with you. Take a deep breath. When you know God, and that is the foundation of your life, it helps put us at, what was the word? At ease. Hey, I don't have the power to do this, but hey, God can tell you what it means. And when you know God, it helps increase our peace and clarify our purpose for each day. I mean, this is why we encourage you to pray first. This is why we write the Living It Out and encourage you to subscribe to it or get it on the app and read it every day. This is why we're doing the morning prayer, to help us know what is God's so that it brings clarity to what our responsibility or what our role is in the day. And so as Joseph says this, Pharaoh, he tells him his dream. He says, well, I was standing on the Nile, and 7 fat, healthy-looking cows were standing there, and out of the Nile come 7 scrawny-looking cows, and they devour the healthy cows. Kind of creepy. And then he said, I had a second dream where there were 7 bundles of healthy, full grains of wheat, or full grains of wheat that were swallowed up by 7 thin grains, and I don't seem to understand that. And so Joseph steps into this. He gives an answer, and part of the answer, he says, the next 7 years will be a period of great prosperity throughout the land of Egypt, but afterward, there will be 7 years of famine so great that all the prosperity will be forgotten in Egypt, and famine will destroy the land. It's a powerful moment. Imagine being there. People are like, this guy just got out of jail, and he's interpreting Pharaoh's dream. And Joseph, the whole time, it's basically saying, hey, this isn't from me, this is from God. While he's interpreting the dream, he was thinking about what it meant and began to ask again, in light of what this dream is telling us about the future, what's the wise thing to do? And so after he interprets the dream, he looks at Pharaoh and he says, therefore, Pharaoh should find an intelligent and wise man and put him in charge of the entire land of Egypt. He takes the opportunity to offer a perspective, a suggestion, because this would be potentially the wise thing to do. He goes on, he says, then Pharaoh should appoint supervisors over the land and let them collect 1/5, 20% of all of the crops during the 7 good years. Why? That way there will be enough to eat when the 7 years of famine come to the land of Egypt. Otherwise, the famine will destroy the land. As Joseph was hearing from God the interpretation of the dream and sharing that with Pharaoh, he asked, well, what's the wise thing to do? What's our role in this? Basically, he gives Pharaoh a plan. Why? Because wisdom allows our goals for tomorrow to guide our decisions today. Wisdom allows our goals, our hopes and dreams of the future to help us prioritize what matters now, today. Maybe you've heard it this way. You begin with the end in mind. Like we need to start our day with what matters most. This is why throughout the Bible, you hear things like first fruits. You give back to God the first portion of what you're given. Why? Because that's what matters most. Or you just give it to whatever it is that matters most to you. We want to give God the first part of our day. This is why we pray before a meal. This is why we pray first. All of this stuff is why? Because you do what matters most first. Think about finances. This is probably the easiest area to live this out. Think about where you want your life to be someday. And you need to make an incremental investment in that someday today. For those people who had saved up an emergency fund, I'm not saying that they're fine in the midst of this coronavirus crisis. But I'm guessing those of you that had some backup emergency resources, the level of anxiety that you're carrying is different. Some of you are like, well, Ben, I don't know how to do that. I can't. Ben, you don't know how difficult it has been. You're right, I don't. But I do know we have resources, Financial Peace University groups, people, individuals that would love to help you begin to find the freedom that you want in your finances. Here's what it says in the Proverbs. It says that the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulps theirs down. A fool just gulp. They just devour everything that's right in front of them. They spend more than they make. And so we need to honor God with our finances. What does that mean? Give to him first. Save for a rainy day. Why? Because there will be seasons of famine that are going to come in our life, and then live on the rest. Culture tells us to do the opposite. Go and spend and buy and more and new and whatever. And I just think that's a foolish way to live. It causes more anxiety in your life than you realize. Unless you assume that you're in control of all of that, that's where self-help ultimately leads us. God invites us to live out of wisdom. That same is true for us relationally. Like in our marriage, we need to think about this. We need to think about this physically. I mean, we need to understand that wisdom allows our goals for tomorrow to guide our decisions today. Think about what you want your marriage to look like in the future. Yes, when you're old and you don't look the way that you do and you can't move the way that you do and you're wrinkly, I think about that. What do you want your marriage to look like? Begin investing in that marriage now. For those of you that are single, what do you want your future marriage to look like? Look for those characteristics and not just the physical attributes that you think are tall, dark, and handsome, all right? It's like, let's think about where we want to be and allow that to shape the decisions that we make when we parent our kids, when we look at our physical bodies and what we consume physically. Do what matters most. Do the wise thing first. Because the truth is, about every 5 to 10 years, we are going to face a famine. We're going to face a crisis. And you're not going to be able to control it. So man, keep asking, allow the future hopes and dreams to guide where we're at today. Imagine being Pharaoh at this point. You've heard the dream. you've heard the interpretation of the dream. This prisoner has offered you a suggestion, and at first you didn't understand, and now you understand that you're facing a looming crisis. Like, what do you do? What would you do? Think about it. What are we gonna do? I mean, what's our plan? Maybe we got 7 years of good. Maybe we'll just punt and ignore it for a little bit. We got plenty of time. Or maybe it's like bury our head in the sand. This is a prisoner. He doesn't know what we're talking about. Look at what Pharaoh did. Pharaoh asked his officials, guys, can we find anyone else like this man who's so obviously filled with the Spirit of God? I imagine he called like a team meeting. He's like, all right, guys, let's talk about this. Why do you feel about it? Does it make sense to you? I mean, do we really have any other options? And then afterwards, he looks at Joseph and he says, since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is intelligent or wise as you are. And so you will be in charge of my court, and all of my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a higher rank than yours. Wow. Now, I know some of you know the end of the story, and you just need to stop for a minute and actually think critically about what it would have been like to be in the room. I mean, a few moments before, he was fully bearded and had been wearing the same outfit for years in prison. It seems a bit foolish, would be the word there. It seems like ready, fire, aim. Pharaoh is just making a rash decision here. I mean, he went from prison to now he's second in command just because he interpreted a dream. That seems a little crazy, right? But I believe Pharaoh understands wisdom, even if he doesn't personally know God. Why? Because wisdom values progress more than perfection. Yes, it remembers what's God's and what's ours, and it lets the future decide what we're going to do today, but wisdom also values progress over perfection. Pharaoh needed to make a decision today to avoid a foolish delay. Did he have all the information that he needed? No. But he had enough to make progress. Now, we don't know everything that happened, but we can speculate. I mean, it says that he talked to his officials. Like the story leaves out details that probably happened. He was having a conversation with his officials. Let's speculate on what that looked like. Who was the person who brought the information to him? It was the cupbearer. And the cupbearer, while serving him and hearing about his being upset about the dream that nobody can interpret, the cupbearer was like, hey, a guy in prison helped interpret my dream. And Pharaoh's like, wait, what? A guy in prison? Are you serious? This is your recommendation? And the cupbearer's probably like, yeah, it seems crazy, but man, he was right on the money. Maybe he can help you. And so Pharaoh thinks about it for a minute, and he calls over the warden who's responsible for the prison. He's like, hey, do you know anything about this Joseph guy? And for those of you that know the story, what would the warden say? He'd be like, oh man, ever since he came to prison, my job's been easy. I mean, I haven't had to do anything. I've been able to focus on other responsibilities because he takes care of almost everything. The prisoners, I mean, everything that he puts his hands to, he's successful. It's like, wow. Pharaoh's like, well, how did a guy like that end up in prison? And I imagine the warden was like, I don't know, something about Potiphar's wife, too hot to handle, accusing him of something else. And, the truth is, I don't really know. And so what does Pharaoh do next? He calls in Potiphar. And now we don't know that Potiphar was alive, but Potiphar was the captain of the guard, one of probably the highest commanding officers in Pharaoh's military, and knew the warden. And so maybe he's like, hey, Potiphar, tell me about Joe. Potiphar's like, bro, I'd give anything to have him back, man. Him and my wife got into it, but shoot, when he was in charge, my portfolio grew and everything was taken care of. He took care of the staff around the house. I mean, he was phenomenal. The only thing I had to think about was whether I was going to have chicken wings or barbecue for dinner. I miss that guy. See, I don't think that Pharaoh just blindly decided. He may not have had all the information, but he knew that it would be wise to make progress instead of waiting for the perfect person to come along. It says in Ecclesiastes that if you wait for perfect conditions, you'll never get anything done. And some of you are waiting for perfect conditions to join a group. Maybe it's time to make progress. Some of you are waiting for perfect conditions to go to Growth Track and discover your gifts. Some of you are waiting for perfect conditions to invite a friend to join you on an online service. Maybe today's the day. Maybe today's the day to apologize instead of waiting for it to be perfect. Or maybe today's the day where you forgive instead of waiting for them to get it all just right. Maybe today's the day that you begin training for a new job because you don't like where you're at. Maybe today's the day where you ask that person out and ask them to go on a date, but we're locked down. Yeah, but ask them, investigate. Maybe it's time to share with someone or to get the help that you need. Wisdom values progress over perfection. Why? Because perfect, man, it isn't going to happen. And so Pharaoh makes Joseph the second most powerful man in the world. Look at what happened. He had Joseph take a ride in his chariot reserved for his second in command, and wherever Joseph went, the command was shouted, kneel down. 13 years before this, he shared a version of this dream with his brothers, and could you imagine being Joseph? It'd be surreal. He's the second most powerful man in all of Egypt, responsible for leading thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of people through what's ahead. And sure enough, 7 years of amazing profits start rolling in. Wow, it's unbelievable. It's that they had so much, they stopped counting. And so over those 7 years, he still needed to be wise and ask, what's the wise thing to do? Why? Because sure enough, after those 7 years, the famine hit, and it hit hard. In fact, the whole region was impacted. In fact, it was impacting other communities outside of Egypt. As far away as 500 miles, where Jacob and Joseph's brothers were struggling to put food on the table. And so Jacob sends 10 of his sons to Egypt to see if they could buy some grain so that they could feed their family. And little did anybody know that this moment was going to come. Joseph couldn't see it, the brothers couldn't see it, but since Joseph was governor of all of Egypt in charge of selling grain to all of the people, it was to him that his brothers came. And when they arrived, they bowed before him with their faces in the ground. They were to the ground. Imagine that moment. They don't recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognizes them. It's been 22 years since he's seen them at this point. There's, 9 years into the 7 years of plenty, 2 years of famine. What would your reaction be? There'd be a part of me that would be like, hey, dream fulfilled, suckers. I'm the most powerful man in the world. Look at you bowing to the ground. I'd want to rub it in their face. There'd be a part of me that would want to enact revenge. I'd want to get them back. Yeah, I know what some of you are thinking. It's like, well, man, we should forgive, all forget and forgot, and let's be back together and group hug everybody. But the truth is, can he trust them right now? Does he really know what's going on? He knows he has a younger brother. Are they treating him the same way? Are they still lying to their dad? Are they still fighting with each other? You see, feelings in these moments range all over the place. And it's foolish to ignore them. But it's really foolish to let them drive. And when our feelings are all over the place, we need to stop and we need to ask what's the wise thing to do. Why? Because wisdom reflects instead of foolishly reacting. When we just do whatever feels good in the moment, do you know what we do? We start to recycle foolishness over and over and over again. And Joseph could have done this. He could have recycled foolishness and treated them the way that they had treated him 22 years prior. He could have recycled foolishness and he could have said arrogant things and rubbed it in their face. He could have ignored them. He also could have just automatically trusted them and not worked them through a series of tests to see where they were at. It's foolish to do all of that. Instead, we need to reflect and ask what's the wise thing to do. Because there are going to be times when you feel lonely, like some of you feel right now. And your feelings are going to tell you to go back to that old fling that isn't really worth it. Don't let your feelings drive. Or maybe there's going to be a time where we feel pain and discomfort and we're going to want to just reactivate that old habit again to make ourselves feel better just for a moment or try something else unhealthy. No, instead reflect. Ask what's the wise thing to do. Sometimes you're going to feel attacked by your family or by other people, and you're going to want to power up and get aggressive and get defensive. No, stop and reflect. Where do you want to be in the future? And let that guide the priorities or how you're going to respond today. When you feel overlooked, man, it's easy to try to isolate and run away and get depressed, or maybe try foolish things to get noticed. Stop, reflect on what is God's and what he says is true about you. And realize that your today, friends, our today is not going to be our forever. Joseph could have repeated his foolishness, but instead, as you're going to see next week, he asked what's the wise thing to do. And it leads to a powerful ending to what is otherwise a very complicated and troubling story. It's powerful. It says in James that if you need wisdom, we can ask our generous God and he will give it to you and he will not rebuke you for asking. And so friends, the biggest battles that you and I are going to face today and in the months and the weeks ahead of us are going to be battles in our mind. You see, your life moves in the direction of your strongest thoughts. And so if we don't ask God to help us see what the wise thing is to do, we're going to miss the vision and the dream that he has for us. And so let's pursue wisdom today. Let's begin to apply to our lives the principles that we already know he's asking us to do. And when we don't know, when we're not sure, let's come back and ask our generous God to guide us and trust that he will help us see what is the wise thing for us to do. And so, man, let's pursue that together. Let's keep asking, what's the wise thing for me to do today? In fact, I want you to do that right now. I want you to think about where you're at today and maybe some foolishness that you're being tempted into. Maybe it's a big decision. Maybe you're letting your feelings let you jump to conclusions about things that you need to just let go. Whatever that is, man, let's pursue that together. This is how we're going to rise together. And what I love about Jesus is that even when we're foolish, he forgives us. I mean, Jesus came to earth and gave his life even though he knew we were going to continue to sin and mess it up. And his grace meets us in the moments of pressure. His Spirit is there to help give us the strength that we don't have on our own when we trust him. And you know what's amazing about his compassion and his presence is he loves to be near to us even when we're in the midst of the deep feelings and distressing emotions that come our way. And you know what is so powerful about his forgiveness is that it doesn't hold our past against us. It gives us a fresh start. And so friends, let's remember what the gospel says is true about you as we pursue wisdom together. And if you've never taken your first step of faith, if you've never received these gifts, I want to give you an opportunity to do that right now. I don't believe it's an accident that you're here watching on some device, wherever you're at right now. God is extending an invitation for you to experience his love, his grace, his forgiveness in your life. And where that begins is with a prayer, of giving him, surrendering your life to him. And I've got a prayer right here that I would love for you to say out loud in the quietness of your heart, wherever you're at. If you want to take your first step of faith and be a part of God's forever family, tell him, God, I want to know you. Say that out loud right now. Today I place my faith in you and I confess my sin and receive the new life that Jesus graciously offers at the cross. I want to follow you from this day forward. Thank you for loving me. Pray that in Jesus' name, amen. See, the Bible says that when you and I place our faith in him, his Spirit lives inside of us and he begins to change us from the inside out. The truth is, I would love to be able to celebrate this with you. If you took your first step of faith, I want you to join the over 70 that have done this over the last few weeks. They've texted in their decision. They text the word decided to 419-419-0707. We had about 80 at Easter, and over the last few weeks after Easter, 5 or 6 weeks after Easter, the 5 weeks, we're in the 5th week of the series, people have just let us know they've taken their first step. And so if you would love to do that, give us your information. We'd love to congratulate you, send you some stuff in the mail to help you take your next steps on that life-changing adventure with him. And I think for all of us, before we head back to whatever is next, I want to encourage you to just take a minute and let's remember who we are building our life on, the one that we are building our life on, and that we can trust him and ask him to open our eyes, to help us see the wisdom that's around us and the work that he's doing inside of us. And so let's make this final song kind of our heart's prayer as we think about asking what's the wise thing to do. Thanks.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever